Welcome back to the Big Idea Seminar here at the grade. My name is Phil Moss. This is the 8th grade seminar, and today we're going to talk about true manliness. As we usually do, I wanted to begin by going over the big picture. All right, we do this at the beginning of every class. So remember, we have big decisions, right, that we need to make. Here is our timeline, and the big question is, are we going to be ready for those big decisions? Remember, in this square, we have big decisions coming up. And if you were here, I would quiz you, but since you're not, I'll just give them to you. What are our 4 pillars? Our 4 pillars are, first and foremost, fatherhood. Second, friendship. Third, professional life. And 4, citizenship. In these moments, we're very concerned about all 4 of these pillars, and maybe now more than other occasions, citizenship, just concerned about the condition and state of our country, so that's something we're keeping very much in mind. But in the meantime, we are developing ourselves so that we can be strong pillars in all of these areas. Now, let's remember the lessons that we've learned in other moments in the seminar. To have good friends, be a good friend. So remember that if we want to have strong friendships, that means that we ourselves need to be good friends to our friends. Right? We need to care about them, enjoy them, be committed to them, sacrifice ourselves for them. Maybe in these moments it means making phone calls to your friends, arranging some sort of activity that you can do together with some online platform, or more importantly, building friendship also with your siblings, spending time with them, enjoying. And then we've talked about authority, and to be free, I need authority. Right? We remember how the purpose of our freedom is to do the good, and so we need authority to help guide us. And I think we're realizing that, especially these days, how much we're trusting in our authority. And so this is also the case, you know, with our teachers and with our parents, that their presence in our life is not one of restriction, but of enabling us to be truly free to move ourselves in the right direction. So we want to be very grateful to them. We've talked about dating, right? We've talked about dating as the beginning of a process that leads to marriage, and how important it is to take that very seriously and to not begin this until you're in a situation in which marriage is a proximate reality. And then we've talked about the importance of focus, and how to focus on our big ideals to become the kind of man that we want to be. We need to pay attention to our attention. So to focus on our ideals in the long term, we also need to focus on our attention in the short term. What am I doing right now on this task at hand? So I'm sure right now all of you are considering how you can be better students in these circumstances. Okay, and then finally, in the last month we talked about study, and to appreciate study, we hit this idea that bedrock of service is a willingness to learn. So if you want to be of service to somebody, that somebody is going to be leaning, one, on your willingness, like do you want to help them, but not only that, but also on your knowledge. Right? Do you have the knowledge to be able to help them in whatever way? So for example, if somebody needs help fixing their bike, well, if you're going to help them, you need to know about bikes, which means you have to have studied or somehow learned about bikes. And that this is the perspective of all our study, that we're really preparing ourselves to be in a position to serve people. Okay, so now we're going to proceed to our topic of today, true manliness. I'm going to spray the board down, get rid of this. This is all kind of messy here. All clean. How's everybody doing? So good to be with you in this way. Okay. We are clearly in times of trial. And I think an interesting thing about times of trial is that these are moments in which your values are put to the test. This coronavirus lockdown then, I think it has important lessons to give us. It's moments of trials like these that bring our true character to light. And I think a key question that we can ask ourselves, and maybe even thinking about this past week, is, do I live for myself or for others? As we look back on this week, we can think, how have I reacted? Have my concerns been focused on my interests? How this is an inconvenience for me? Or how I would like to do certain things, but now I'm not able to? Or have I been concerned about other people? Have I been concerned about my family? How can I help mom and dad in these more distressful moments? How can I be there for my siblings? So these difficult moments kind of bring these deeper convictions to life. So today we are going to talk about true manliness. What does that mean? I think when we think about manliness, I think everybody has some sort of a set of ideas that comes to mind. Maybe kind of a vague general description. But it's actually kind of difficult to nail it down. I want to offer you a definition that we can use as something to guide our reflection today. I want to say that true manliness is the quality of a person that comes from having a manly character. So as you can see here, there are two main elements to this definition. One is character, and the other one is manly. So what do we mean by character? Character, I would propose, is having a set of habits that give us a general disposition to do the good. Now, in our definition, we say that true manliness is having a manly character, right? So, what makes this manly? So, I think here we see that it's living out these habits in a manly way, something that's proper to a man. So, we'll talk about what that means. It's difficult to really nail it down, but I think I would say that a key characteristic of somebody that has a manly character is strength. There's a great book called Father the Family Protector, in which the author does a series of descriptions. He kind of talks to various persons and asks them, what do you remember about your father? And a lot of these descriptions, the persons remember the strength of their father in various ways, even in simple ways, saying, I always remember Dad that he was able to reach to the top shelf in the pantry and get that jar and unscrew that really difficult lid to open. Or I remember Dad that time we were walking through the park and this dog came running at us and how he defended us from that dog. So a lot of these descriptions exhibit strength. So I think this is a key element of what it means to be a man. But what makes someone strong? And I think the key question to address in asking about strength is the one of identity. So the question is, who am I? So the question is, what makes someone strong? And I want to say that strength of character springs in large part from a strong sense of identity. Who am I? So to answer the question, who am I think it's important first to ask, who am I from? And who am I for? So for instance, who am I from? We say, well, I am a son of God. And so I think in these moments of difficulty that helps gives us strength, because we know that we are in God's hands and God will take care of us and bring the best of these situations. But today, the focus I want to give to this presentation is the question, who am I for? Who am I for? There are two basic attitudes that we can have. I can either see myself as for me, or I can see myself as for others. For me or for others. This was illustrated in a great way, I think, by a journalist named David Brooks, who remembered at one point he turned on the TV and he saw an NFL running back score a touchdown and do all sorts of dancing and chest thumping and kind of pointing to himself and pointing to the crowd. And then shortly thereafter, he turned on the radio and he listened to a rerun of a program that was aired shortly after World War II. That was, I guess, the person on the program was Bing Crosby, and he was sharing some different news. And he shared the comments of a war correspondent named Ernie Pyle. And so what did Ernie Pyle said? He said, "You know, we didn't win this war because we're better than anybody else. We just happened to be blessed with a lot of material abundance. We had some good allies. We should just try to stay modest and be worthy of the peace." And so for David Brooks, he was very struck by this contrast that you have, on the one hand, somebody who had just coming out of a war and had just out of a victory of war, and then you have somebody else who basically just scored a touchdown. And the person who scored the touchdown is thumping his chest as if it was something much greater than what the actions of the person who won the war signified. So what this led David Brooks to consider is that we've kind of fallen into a big me culture, a culture that really emphasizes the me. And so in a certain sense, it kind of proposes that the answer to that question, who am I for? A lot of people today will say, well, I am for me. But I think that this is not going to help us to become true men. Let me offer another story or anecdote. So not long ago, I was with some friends, and a couple of us had planned to stay up late and to catch up. It had been a long time since we were together. And so I went up to another friend and I told him, hey, you should come be with us. And this friend of mine is married and has several children. And he said, no, I shouldn't. And I said, oh, come on, like, what do you have going on? You don't have anything going on. And this friend of mine said, well, the thing is that tomorrow I've got to be a father. And he was basically saying that he needed to get a good night's rest so he could have the energy to be a father. And so this really struck me because I found in this statement an expression of somebody who has a strong sense of identity, an expression of somebody who says, I am a father. And the important thing for me is to be strong for my family, for my wife, and for my children. True manliness is not simply toughness. It is not simply the capacity to withstand pain. Sometimes when we think of manliness, the first image that might come into your head is one of football players, boxers, big, kind of strong, burly men, maybe the lumberjack. We can have all sorts of great individual qualities, but at the same time, not necessarily be a great man. So to be a great man, it is not enough to have strength. So the big question is, who are these qualities for? And to answer that, I think we can look at this idea is that our character is a manly character. Okay. Let's go back to the 4 pillars of the grade. Okay, so here we have the 4 pillars of the grade. Now notice, there is one of these pillars that is only applicable to men. And that is the pillar of fatherhood. Fatherhood is that pillar that is particular to men. Key source of identity for a man is precisely his fatherhood. A true man is a man for his family. He is for his wife. He is for his children. And also, this is also true for people who are called to a spiritual fatherhood, which is also a very real fatherhood. They are fathers for their spiritual family. So I want to tell you a story about what happened at the 2010 Masters. So there was this golfer named Phil Mickelson, and his wife had been afflicted with cancer. And so it was very dramatic, and this was something that was obviously very, very well known by everybody. It was in the media. And so Phil Mickelson won that tournament. And so it was very striking because in that tournament there was also another golfer who had been recently it came to light that he had been unfaithful. And so here you have these 2 men that are striving for the trophy, and in the case of the latter, he didn't win, and he basically rushed off the course. But then Phil Mickelson, there he was on the green, having just won the Masters. He received his trophy, and so but at that point, his wife, who had been sick in bed, came to be with him there after he won the tournament. And so Phil Mickelson, he put the trophy down, and he went over and he gave his wife and his children a big kiss. So I think this was a moment where it became very evident just what exactly is the trophy of a man, or maybe you should say, what is his treasure? The treasure for a man is his family, is his wife and his children. Okay, so with these things in mind, let's ask the question, what does it mean to be a father? A father gives life, and a father defends life. A father generates life through his self-gift, the gift of his very being. He gives himself first and foremost to his wife, and in the natural course of events, that self-gift also brings about new life in the children. And the sense of gift is not restricted simply to the moment of birth, but the father gives himself to that child for the entirety of his existence, all the way through eternal life. And I think here it's important to remember just the grave responsibility that the father has for the spiritual formation of his children. That gift of self to his children is a gift that goes all the way to eternity. But in the process of development of the life of the child, the nature of that self-gift of the father takes on the character of defending. And here we see how a good father is a good protector. A father is a protector. In other sessions of the grade, we've also talked about this idea that we're called to be protectors, and we've talked about it in the context of respect for women, and how we want to be protectors of women, the women that God has put in our life. And so one day as a father, that will be your wife and your daughters. Now, as you grow up, it's important to have a strong sense of caring for your sisters and for your mother. So you can ask yourselves, am I a protector of my sisters and my mother? Do I treat them with courtesy, with respect? Do I stand up for them? These are important things to work on. These are important things to not lose sight of. There are 3 characteristics to giving life and defending life that I would like to point out. The first characteristic is commitment, and I would describe it in this way. Commitment is that attitude of a person that says, I am for you no matter what the difficulties. How do you know if you're committed? Well, the telltale sign of commitment is sacrifice. Are you willing to forego your comfort? Are you willing to forego your advantage for the sake of the person that you love? Are you willing to forego even your very life? And I think in these moments, these are questions that we're asking ourselves. To what degree am I willing to make a sacrifice for myself, for the people that I care about? I think this is expressed very well in the vow that husband and wife exchange to each other. What do they say? They say to each other, they vow to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. So this is commitment, and this is something that we need to grow in. And you don't have the capacity of commitment automatically, but it takes time to develop. Another characteristic of a father is courage. Another important characteristic of manliness is courage. And I would describe courage in this way. There is no fear that will overcome my being for you. And in the third place, it's important for a father to have compassion. I think this is another characteristic of manliness. A father needs to have a big heart. He does not simply demand. He doesn't just take a toughen up approach, but he has a strong sense of identifying himself with his wife, with his children, understanding them, putting himself in their shoes, trying to identify himself with what's going on in their mind and in their heart. And I think maybe a good illustration of this in the life of a father is a father teaching their son to ride a bike. As their son is riding the bike, there are moments of encouragement where he says, okay, you can do this. Maybe the child gets scared and starts to wobble a little bit, and the father might have to, on the one hand, encourage, but also on the other hand, kind of encourage him to toughen up. Hey, don't be afraid. Move forward. At the same time, he's there. He's holding him all the way through. And then the child starts moving the pedals and slowly gaining momentum, and is able to kind of propel himself forward. And the father, very attentively, slowly removes his hands from the child and watches the child bike down the path. So I think this is can help us understand this idea of truly being there and understanding the situation of the child. So that strong sense of identity, of being for my wife, being for my children, gives a man great strength. He has a strong sense that my strength is for the others. My strength is for my family. My strength is for my children. Estovir, be a man. So estovir is an exhortation in Latin that St. Josemaria would often use to the men that were around him. Be a man. So we have to have a clear sense of being for one's family, for one's friends, for one's community, for one's country. But in order to be able to be there for them, it also takes strength. And so here we are presented with the great task of life, which is forging one's character. It's important to become strong. But that strength is often going to be not so much with external difficulties, but quite often with internal challenges and obstacles. So it's the strength of dealing with the internal obstacles and challenges that we face. Consider how quite often your passions flare. Think about how maybe you get upset with your sister on some occasion, or somehow you have difficulty responding to a request that your mother makes of you, and there's something that surges within you and it's difficult to control that at times. Or consider your softness. Sometimes you don't feel like doing your homework, and sometimes there's a chore that you don't really feel like doing. Or also consider your fears. Maybe it's that the pressure that you receive from your peers to behave in a certain way, and it's difficult to resist that because you're afraid, what are they going to think? So in all these things, they help us to see how we have to be strong internally, and we have to have dominion over ourselves and building those strong habits of character so that we can direct them in a positive direction for the people that we care about. In this line, there is a story which I often reflect upon, which I think is helpful, and that helps us to see how the greatest task in life is that of forging our character. The protagonist of this story is Dwight Eisenhower, the general who led the D-Day invasion and then was president of the United States in a very, very difficult moment following World War II and the beginning of the Cold War. So Dwight had a very stern and firm mother, also very loving and caring. And he grew up in Kansas, and when he was about 10 years old, at one point he wanted to go trick-or-treating. And his mother said, no, you can't go. And so Dwight Eisenhower, who all life long had a very strong temperament, at that point he went up to a tree and started to box the tree as hard as he could, and to the point where the skin was removed from his knuckles, and his knuckles were bleeding. And so his mother saw this from the window of the house, and she saw Dwight come into the house, and she saw Dwight as he went upstairs into his room and just let him sit there for about an hour, and just to kind of reflect on what happened. And after about an hour, Dwight's mother came up, and Dwight's mother came up, and so she attended to his wounds. And while she was mending his wounds, she told him a verse from the Bible, which is, "He who conquereth his own soul is stronger than he who conquereth a city." This was an important lesson that Dwight took with him all life long. And in fact, when he was older and he looked back on his life, he said that was one of the most important lessons of his life. Estovir, be a man. To be a man, we need to have strength. To be a man, we have a strong sense that I am for others, I am for my family. So this coronavirus situation actually presents us with a unique opportunity to grow in our character insofar as that we are facing difficulties. And at the same time, given that we are all spending a lot more time with our respective families, it's an opportunity for us to grow in a strong sense that I am for my family. So put those two together, character, family. This is a great opportunity for all of us to grow in manliness, to grow in that manly strength that knows that its purpose is for the good of one's loved ones and one's family. So be for your family. Spend time with your siblings. Do your chores. Help in ways around the house without need of being asked. Maybe you can surprise your mother and your father. Be understanding of everyone in moments of tension. Organize games. Do things that are fun together. It's important for us to establish that firm identity that I'm for others and not for myself. Also in these times, be strong. Grow in strength. Develop that capacity for commitment. And maybe one specific way in which you can do this is by being committed to your studies, precisely when you don't have your teacher looking over your shoulder as closely. Remember how in other sessions of the grade, we've talked about taking growth into our own hands, taking responsibility for our own growth. So now is the time. So we will develop strength by having a strong sense of commitment in our responsibilities. Right now, our studies, but then also with the other things you have to do around the house. Also, you can see your grade resolutions as a special opportunity to grow in strength, as a special opportunity to grow in commitment, to be a man of your word. When you say, I'm going to do something, to do it and to follow through. And to do it and to follow through precisely because you see the good of others behind it. And in closing, I thought I could share a poem which helps me to reflect a little bit on what it means to be a man. This is a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. So here it is. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet, don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream, and not make dreams your master. If you can think, and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things that gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Once again, we're with you in these moments, and we look forward to our mentoring sessions, which we'll be doing with video chat or with phone calls. So look forward to your mentor reaching out to you. And on the other side of these moments that we're going through right now, we look forward to seeing you at the grade. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.